In the waters of the Gulf of Oman, a single sharp crack split the silence. The 5-inch Mk-45 naval gun aboard an American destroyer spoke with precision. Its rounds tore directly into the engine room of a massive 900-foot Iranian-flagged cargo ship, the MV Touska. Within minutes, the giant vessel slowed, drifted helplessly, and sat dead in the water. U.S. Marines from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit fast-roped onto her deck and seized complete control. No casualties, but the message echoed around the world.
Motor Vessel Touska, Motor Vessel Touska, vacate your engine room. Vacate your engine room. We're prepared to subject you to disabling fire.
Let that image settle in your mind for a moment. An American warship had just fired on an Iranian vessel in international waters, boarded it and taken it the first time shots were fired, and a ship was seized in this unfolding blockade. Hours later, President Trump posted on Truth Social, "We blew a giant hole in her engine room. The cargo is being inspected moment by moment." For decades, the Strait of Hormuz has been the most critical choke point on Earth, the narrow passage through which nearly 1/5 of the world's daily oil supply must flow. Iran believed they could close it at will, threaten commercial tankers, and force the world to accept their terms. They were wrong. What happened in those waters was not just another naval incident. It was America calmly, deliberately, and powerfully reasserting control over the single most important energy artery on the planet. The kind of decisive action that reminds both allies and adversaries why the United States Navy remains unmatched on the seas. But here's what every American needs to understand. This was only the opening move. Right now, something far larger and more systematic is unfolding across the Gulf of Oman and beyond. A carefully orchestrated campaign that reaches well beyond one disabled ship. By the time this story is over, you will see exactly how close the world came to a major energy crisis, and why the decisions being made in these waters right now may reshape the global balance of power for decades to come. Most of the world, watching from afar, assumed this was simply more familiar theater from Tehran. Another round of threats. Another temporary closure of the strait.
Sepa Navy. This is Motor Tanker Sanmar Herald. You gave me clearance to go. My name second on your list. You gave me clearance to go. You are fighting now. Let me turn back.
Iran had issued similar warnings before, and for years the pattern had been the same. Loud declarations followed by eventual de-escalation once enough pressure was applied. Many analysts and commentators believed Washington would respond with sanctions, diplomacy, and perhaps a show of force, but nothing that would truly alter the balance in the Gulf. After all, the Strait of Hormuz had long been considered too dangerous, too economically vital, and too politically complicated for any side to push too far. The global economy depends on that narrow passage. China needs the oil. Europe needs the stability. Even America, despite its own growing energy independence, still cares deeply about the price at the pump and the security of its allies. So when Iranian speedboats harassed ships and the Revolutionary Guards made their bold radio announcements, much of the international community treated it as dangerous posturing, but ultimately manageable. Few imagined that this time would be different. They did not yet see the quiet shift taking place beneath the surface. The methodical movement of American carrier strike groups, the deployment of elite Marine boarding teams, and the activation of an entirely new layer of surveillance that would change the rules of engagement in those waters. The world still viewed the crisis through the old lens, but that assumption was about to be shattered. What looked like just another flare-up in a troubled region was, in reality, the beginning of a far more decisive American response, one designed not merely to react, but to reshape the strategic reality in the Gulf once and for all. That assumption crumbled on a single chaotic morning when Iran made the decision that would alter the entire equation. After briefly reopening the Strait of Hormuz, Tehran suddenly reversed course. Citing the American blockade, the regime ordered it closed once again. Revolutionary Guard commanders went further. Over open radio channels, they declared every ship passing through those waters a legitimate target until the United States lifted its pressure. What followed was not just words. Iranian fast attack craft moved aggressively. At least 3 commercial vessels came under fire with little to no warning. Among them was the massive Suezmax-class Indian tanker Sanmar Herald, carrying 2 million barrels of Iraqi oil. The captain, clearly stunned, could be heard on the recorded bridge audio, desperately pleading with the Iranian forces. Ship on Navy, this is motor vessel Sanmar Herald. You gave me clearance. My name was second on your list. You are firing now. Let me turn back. There was no challenge, no meaningful warning, just sudden gunfire as the tanker approached the Omani coast. A stray round even struck a nearby container ship. In those tense minutes, the world finally saw the dangerous game Iran was willing to play, targeting neutral commercial shipping in one of the most vital energy corridors on Earth. This was Iran's critical miscalculation. They believed they could use the strait as leverage, intimidate the international community, and force Washington to back down. Instead, they handed the United States both the justification and the opportunity to respond with a level of force and precision that few had anticipated. And America was ready. Iran had spent decades preparing for exactly this kind of confrontation. In the narrow confines of the Strait of Hormuz, just 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, they had built a layered arsenal designed not to win a conventional war, but to make any opponent bleed. Let that reality sink in for a moment. Their inventory includes an estimated 4,000 to 6,000 naval mines, many of them advanced magnetic and acoustic types capable of crippling even the largest warships in shallow waters. Then there are the swarm tactics. Between 160 and 200 fast attack craft, many armed with guided missiles and rockets, trained to strike from multiple directions at once, overwhelming radar and defense systems. Beneath the surface, more than 20 Gaudier-class mini-submarines wait in ambush, small enough to hide in coastal shallows and difficult for traditional sonar to detect. Along the shoreline, mobile batteries of Noor and Qatar anti-ship missiles sit hidden in mountain passes and civilian areas, ready to fire and quickly relocate under the shoot-and-scoot doctrine. And above it all, waves of low-cost Shahed and Mohajer drones, some priced as low as $20,000, stand ready to saturate American defenses, forcing multi-million-dollar missiles to chase cheap targets. This was Iran's strategy, not to match American power ship for ship, but to create chaos, raise the cost of engagement, and hope the world would pressure Washington to back away. It was a dangerous bet built on decades of preparation in one of the most confined and strategically vital waterways on Earth. Yet, as formidable as this asymmetric arsenal appears on paper, it was about to meet something far more systematic and overwhelming than anything Tehran had faced before. Then came the moment that would mark a turning point. A massive shadow moved through the waters of the Gulf of Oman, the MV Touska, a 900-foot Iranian-flagged cargo ship weighing over 60,000 tons, long known to American intelligence and listed under U.S. Treasury sanctions. She was attempting to break the naval blockade and reach the Iranian port of Bandar Abbas. Patrolling nearby was the Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer USS Spruance. For 6 long hours, radio calls echoed across the water, clear, professional, and repeated. Motor vessel Touska, motor vessel Touska. This is USS Spruance. Vacate your engine room. Vacate your engine room. We are prepared to subject you to disabling fire. The warnings went unanswered. The Iranian crew held their course. What happened next was broadcast by CENTCOM for the world to see. Second by second, the USS Spruance's 5-inch Mk-45 gun opened fire with precision. Rounds slammed directly into the ship's engine room. No attempt was made to sink her, only to disable. Within moments, the massive vessel lost propulsion and sat motionless on the water. The historic threshold had been crossed. This was the first time in the blockade that American forces had fired shots and seized a vessel. As the Touska lay dead in the water, helicopters delivered Marines from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit. They fast-roped onto the deck and took complete control of the ship in a textbook-opposed boarding operation. The cargo would soon be inspected. The message to Tehran was unmistakable. Hours later, President Trump addressed the nation through his Truth Social account with characteristic directness. We blew a giant hole in her engine room. The cargo is being inspected moment by moment. Let that sequence sink in. One American destroyer, acting with restraint yet unmistakable resolve, had neutralized a sanctioned vessel attempting to defy international maritime order. No loss of life. No unnecessary escalation. Just calibrated, overwhelming force. This single operation was more than a tactical success. It proved that the United States was willing to move from warnings to action, and it served as the opening phase of something much larger. Because what followed was not a one-time response, but the full activation of an overwhelming American presence that had been quietly assembling across the region. Because what began with a single precision strike quickly revealed itself as part of a far more comprehensive American operation. In the days that followed, the United States activated a level of naval and air power not seen in the Gulf for decades. 3 full carrier strike groups now operate in the region: the USS Gerald R. Ford, the USS Abraham Lincoln, and the USS George H.W. Bush. These are not symbolic deployments. Each carrier brings a full air wing of advanced fighters, surveillance aircraft, and the unmatched ability to project power across hundreds of miles. Supporting them are multiple Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers, including the USS Michael Murphy and USS Frank E. Peterson, Jr., positioned for both escort and rapid response. On their decks, visit, board, search, and seizure teams stand ready, while the more dangerous operations are handled by the elite Marines of the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, operating from the amphibious assault ship USS Tripoli. When resistance is expected, Navy SEAL commandos are inserted via MH-60 Seahawk helicopters, fast roping onto target vessels with practiced precision. Above the horizon, the air picture is equally dominant. At least 16 to 20 F-35 Lightning II fighters, both carrier-based F-35Cs and land-based F-35, as provide unmatched stealth and situational awareness. They are joined by F/A-18 Super Hornets and supported by P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft that track every vessel for hundreds of miles. AH-64 Apache attack helicopters operating from expeditionary sea bases like the USS Lewis B. Puller Hunt Iranian fast attack craft swarms with lethal efficiency. And then there is the invisible layer that truly changes the game. Task Force 59. This American unit has deployed dozens of AI-supported unmanned surface vessels and drones throughout the Gulf of Oman and the Strait. These systems continuously scan acoustic signatures, thermal profiles, and hull characteristics. Even if a tanker shuts off its transponder or changes its flag, the digital net recognizes it. Picture the scale of this buildup for a moment. 3 carrier strike groups, elite boarding forces, 5th-generation aircraft, and an artificial intelligence network turning the sea into a transparent domain. All of this assembled with calm professionalism and coordinated with precision. This is not a hasty reaction. It is a deliberately overwhelming response designed to remove any doubt about American resolve in these waters. Yet the true brilliance of the operation lies not just in the raw power on display, but in how that power has been woven into a complete system, one that operates across multiple domains simultaneously and leaves Iran with almost no room to maneuver. Yet the true brilliance of this American operation lies not only in the visible firepower, but in the invisible system that ties it all together. Rather than risk direct confrontation inside the narrow Strait of Hormuz, where Iranian mines and shore-based missiles could create complications, the United States chose to operate primarily in the wider waters of the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. In these open expanses, American destroyers enjoy 3-6, 0-degree radar coverage and unlimited fields of fire. This single strategic choice dramatically reduces risk to American personnel while denying Iran the close-range ambush advantages they had prepared for years. At the heart of this system is an AI-powered digital net unlike anything previously seen in the region. Task Force 59's unmanned surface vessels and drones continuously scan every vessel within range. They capture acoustic signatures from propellers, thermal images of hulls, and detailed profiles that cannot be hidden by simply changing a flag or turning off a transponder. A ship that goes dark within a 5-mile radius is automatically flagged as a threat. Within hours, it can be intercepted far from Iranian coastal defenses. This network extends well beyond the Gulf. Through close coordination between CENTCOM and Indo-Pacific Command, American forces now track Iran-linked tankers across the Indian Ocean, through the Strait of Malacca, and even into the South China Sea. If a vessel somehow slips through Hormuz, it can still be stopped days later off the coast of Malaysia or Singapore. Let that sink in for a moment. The sea is no longer opaque. It has become a transparent domain where every Iranian tanker leaves a digital fingerprint that is nearly impossible to erase. Mines, swarms, and coastal missiles lose much of their deterrent value when the United States chooses the time and place of engagement. This is system thinking at its most sophisticated, combining overwhelming conventional power with persistent intelligence, precision, and global reach. And the consequences of this integrated approach are now beginning to unfold in ways that will test Iran's entire economic and military strategy. And the consequences of this integrated American approach are now landing with sobering weight on Tehran. Iran's economy remains dangerously dependent on maritime trade, Between 1.4 to 1.8 million barrels of oil flow out of its ports every single day, the vast majority passing through the Strait of Hormuz on its way to China and other buyers. With American forces now systematically intercepting and boarding Iran-linked vessels in open waters, that lifeline is under direct and sustained pressure. Let that number sink in for a moment. Analysts estimate daily revenue losses for Tehran could reach between $280 to $450 million. For a nation already strained by sanctions, subsidies, and heavy military spending, this is the equivalent of a controlled economic hemorrhage. But the damage runs much deeper than oil revenue alone. For years, the same sea routes have carried far more than crude. Ballistic missile components, drone engines, cruise missile parts, and advanced weapons destined for the Houthis in Yemen and Hezbollah in Lebanon have moved through these waters under various disguises. By seizing and inspecting these vessels, the United States is not only squeezing Iran's wallet, but systematically severing the supply lines that sustain its entire axis of proxy forces across the region. This dual-pressure economic and military has already begun to shift Tehran's calculations. What started as defiant closure of the strait has quietly led to renewed back-channel efforts. Just days after the Touska incident, 2 American C-17 transport aircraft landed in Islamabad. Security around key hotels was tightened, roads were closed, and a new round of indirect negotiations between American and Iranian representatives began under Pakistani mediation. The tone from Washington has been unmistakable. A fair deal is still on the table, but the alternative is continued pressure until Iran's choices become unsustainable. This is strategic consequence in its purest form. Not sudden destruction, but deliberate, sustained erosion of Iran's leverage. And as these pressures mount, the implications stretch far beyond the waters of the Gulf. And as these pressures mount inside Iran, the implications stretch far beyond the Gulf, touching the most powerful players on the global stage. China, Tehran's largest customer for discounted Iranian oil, now faces a quiet but serious dilemma. Beijing has watched American forces methodically intercept tankers that once delivered cheap crude to its ports. Any sustained disruption risks higher energy costs at a time when China's economy is already navigating its own challenges. The message is subtle but unmistakable. Control of the world's most critical energy chokepoint still rests to a significant degree with the United States Navy. Let that reality settle for a moment. The price of oil, the stability of global supply chains, and the economic health of nations from Europe to Asia are all being quietly influenced by decisions made in these waters. What happens in Hormuz does not stay in Hormuz. This operation also sends a larger signal about the emerging world order. In an era when some nations have questioned American staying power, Washington has demonstrated both the will and the capability to protect vital international waterways with precision and restraint. It echoes a lesson from history. Many Americans remember, the tanker war of the 1980s, when the U.S. Navy escorted oil tankers through these same dangerous waters and ultimately helped restore freedom of navigation. Today's campaign is more sophisticated, more technological, and more global in reach, yet the strategic principle remains the same. The United States will not allow any single power to hold the world's energy lifelines hostage. These developments are forcing every major capital from Beijing to Moscow to Brussels to reassess long-held assumptions about power projection and maritime security in the 21st century. And that reassessment brings us to a deeper truth about what is really at stake in these waters. And that deeper truth takes us right back to where this story began in the waters of the Gulf of Oman, where one American destroyer's precise gunfire and the swift boarding of the MV Touska sent a signal that resonated far beyond that single ship. What we are witnessing is not merely a naval operation, it is a demonstration of American power in its most effective form, measured, technologically superior, and strategically patient. The United States did not rush into conflict. Instead, it built a complete system, overwhelming in strength, yet disciplined in execution, that has quietly changed the balance in one of the world's most dangerous regions. This is the America that many had begun to doubt, still capable of protecting global commons, still willing to defend vital interests, and still unmatched when it chooses to act. Let that sink in. In an age of rapid change and rising challengers, the United States Navy has once again shown that freedom of navigation is not negotiable, and that those who threaten it will face real, tangible consequences. The coming weeks and months will test whether Tehran recognizes this new reality or continues down a costly path. For the rest of us, the lesson is clear. Strategic patience backed by overwhelming capability remains one of the most powerful forces in international affairs. If you value clear-eyed, in-depth analysis of events that shape our world free from hype and grounded in strategy, then you're already in the right place. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe this pressure will bring Iran back to serious negotiations, or will we see further escalation? Your perspective matters here. Thank you for spending this time with us on the Rampart. Stay informed, stay steady, and we'll continue to watch these critical developments together.